Om Tat Sat. Welcome to Gyan Bhakti. We are currently studying the scripture Mysticism of Srimad Bhagavatam. Commentary is by my worshipful Guruji, Swami Jyotirmayananda Maharaj, narrated by myself, Swami Nikhilananda. So in today's satsang, we will be covering a beautiful story, Dhruva, the boy devotee. In the early stages of creation, there lived a great king named Uttanapad, who had two wives, Sunati and Suruchi. It was fairly common at back in that era for the kings and royalty, etc., to have multiple spouses. Even in the Hindu culture, of course, in the Muslim culture, as you well know, that is still a practice in many countries. But back then, that was the practice in Bharatvarsh or India. Suniti was an embodiment of virtue and righteousness. Suruchi was younger in age and more rajasic or externalized, wanting more material things. Suniti bore the king a son named Dhruva, and through Suruchi, Uttanapada had another son named Uttama. As time passed, the king became more interested in the younger wife. As a result of coming under her sway, he began to ignore his elder wife Suniti and the son Dhruva. One day, when Dhruva was 5 years old, he saw his father sitting on the throne. Playfully and with great delight, he moved forward to sit in his father's lap. To Dhruva's surprise, Suruchi scolded him, saying, "You do not deserve to ever sit in the arms of your father, nor can you ever be entitled to the throne. Your father is mine, and it is my son Uttama who will receive his father's affection." The king, being under the sway of Suruchi, didn't say a word. Dhruva was deeply hurt by the words of his stepmother and went crying to his mother, Suniti. Because she was also mistreated by her co-wife and virtually ignored by her husband, Suniti knew that she could not help Dhruva. However, she expressed her deep sympathy, saying, "Only God can help you, my son. If you wish to ascend to the throne like Uttama, take refuge in the Lord. Only in that way can your problem be resolved." Dhruva took his mother's advice seriously and left the capital city. He prepared to enter into a forest, renouncing all, although he was only 5 years old. On the way, Dhruva met sage Narada, who gave him saintly instructions and initiated him into the mantra of Lord Vishnu. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is the mantra of Lord Vishnu. When the boy left sage Narada to begin his austerity in the forest, the sage went back to the capital to visit King Uttanapada. He found the king grieving over the fact that due to his enslavement by a woman's charms, he had become so heartless to Dhruva and his mother that he mistreated him. The sage soothed the fears of the king by assuring him that Dhruva would be safe in the forest and before long would return to enhance the fame of the royal family. So as you can see, Narada represents Satsanga and the balm-like feeling, ointment-like feeling. Wherever there are sages and saints, they relieve people's pain and bring solace and happiness. Just like he guided Dhruva, he also guided his father, Dhruva's father, King Uttanapada. So day by day, Dhruva continued to repeat the mantra and practice intense meditation on Lord Vishnu, standing on one foot in a pose that has become famous as Dhruva's pose. One day, after 6 months had passed, Dhruva was enjoying the sweetness of the divine presence in his heart when suddenly that divine form vanished. Dhruva became restless and opened his eyes. There before him was the very same dazzling form that he had been meditating upon. Lord Vishnu had come before him along with the Garuda bird. Dhruva was amazed by this mystic experience and didn't know what to do. He bowed low and threw himself down on the ground. Then he stood up and gazed with intensity and love into Lord Vishnu's eyes, unable to express his feelings in words. Lord Vishnu touched Dhruva's face with his conch, and the moment he did so, inspiration surged within the heart of Dhruva. All the knowledge of the scriptures flowed into his mind, and he began to express himself in a most wondrous and eloquent way, offering prayers to Lord Vishnu. It's called Dhruvastuti. Lord Vishnu then said, O Dhruva, I know what is within your heart. I am going to grant you the abode that is most difficult for mortals to attain, that invincible abode known as Dhruvaloka or the pole star. You will also have the fulfillment of that desire which originally led you to practice austerity. You will become the successor of the throne of your father and rule the earth for a long time, performing great sacrifice to humanity. Your stepbrother Uttama will be killed in course of time in a hunting accident. Suruchi, his mother, will become mad at the loss of her son and will perish in a forest fire. You will rule the kingdom in an unobstructed way until your death. After that, you will ascend to the realm where I dwell, the realm from which none return to the world. There you will be united with me forever. So this was the prasada or the holy sanctified blessing of Lord Vishnu to his pure devotee, only 5-year-old Dhruva. So the mystical meaning is Uttanapada is a symbol of the jiva or individual soul. Every soul faces a choice in life, whether to follow the path of blessedness, it is called Shre Marg, which leads to liberation, or to follow the path of pleasure, which is called Prey Marg, which tempts the soul with transient enjoyments. Shreya is represented by Suniti and Preya by Suruchi. Through Shreya, inspiration or Dhruva is born. Through Preya, Uttama is born. Uttama literally means the best. Suruchi's son Uttama symbolizes the mind that constantly seeks what seems best in the world of time and space. In this case, his father's lap and all the luxuries. Uttanapada in his worldly mindedness came under the influence of Suruchi and her pleasure of her company as she promised him. Such a relationship, symbolic of Preya Marg, seems like the most wonderful nectar at first, because it is pleasing to the senses. Eventually, however, it becomes like poison when one discovers that Preya has made him a slave of his senses, which is why Uttanapad was crying later that he had treated his son Dhruva so badly. Sunita, on the other hand, Suniti, was ignored by the king and considered of less value. So too, the sattvic cultivation of ethical values and spiritual discipline on the path of Shreya seems boring or even poisonous at first. However, it is said boring task that eventually leads one to the highest bliss of divine communion. So that is the path. If we stick to it, it turns into nectar. Initially, it tastes like poison because we are so addicted to the worldly processes. By adopting the path of devotion symbolized by Narada and intense meditation, aspiration personified by Dhruva is fulfilled by self-realization. Dhruva attains Jivan Mukti, liberation in life, as well as the blessings necessary to be a great servant of mankind. Finally, when his prarabdha or fructifying karma is over, this great devotee attains Videha Mukti or bodiless liberation and becomes one with the divine self forever. Associating the ultimate abode of Dhruva with the pole star is both poetic and profound. While other celestial bodies continuously circle around the pole star, the star remains stationary. Similarly, in the state of self-realization attained by Dhruva, one is ever rooted in Brahman. The universe revolves round and round the central core of the divine self, while that self remains unmoving and unaffected, which is with our bodies also. The self is constant while everything around it is moving and transient. With this, we conclude our satsanga for today. This is Swami Nikhilananda. Om Tat Sat.